Hey guys, Lex here again. I know it's been a while. I've been busy, sorry. Just been having some real life things popping up. Nothing crazy, just friends visiting and stuff like that that I haven't seen in a while. You know, just spending time with them, being good hosts, entertaining people.
Yeah.
Real quick, before we get into this video, I just want to say thank you so much. 1,000 subs, that's a milestone, man. What a great gift for the holiday. I'm just glad so many of you find my videos, I mean, again, informative or entertaining in some way. Thank you guys, thank you. So for this particular video, and I'm not gonna lie, this is gonna be somewhat similar to the last video I uploaded.
Because...
A lot of you pointed out in the comments that I should have been swinging the short sword first. You're saying, hey, Lex, you get more DPS if you swing the short sword first, and then it's just a better combo. I don't know why you're swinging the main hand only. It's less DPS. What are you doing? And I mean, you know, sure enough, I mean, yeah. You were right. Even just doing it off the cuff without actually recording the numbers at first, I noticed that swinging the short sword first does cut down on the wind-up animation of the main hand significantly. So when running Slayer Fighter and trying to maximize your damage in the shortest period of time, you should swing the short sword first and then follow up with your main hand swings. So just a quick note about this video. As you can see with the new Goblin Caves queue below me and the server maintenance message, Iron Mace has since updated the game as I was making this one and has updated a few things. So initially this video is going to be about comparing the damage of the swinging the short sword first with the popular main hands that Slayer fighters have been using and just kind of overall praising the short sword.
But
obviously most of you know since then that Iron Mace has given the short sword a pretty hefty nerf. I believe it's -10 to -13 move speed, which is not great, but kind of workaroundable. But what's the bigger nerf is the -25% move speed while swinging instead of -10%. Yeah, that's massive. I know this is probably justified in giving some players some counterplay against landmine rogues because, you know, if a rogue popped out of stealth with ambush up and they had like a epic or legendary short sword, there was very little chance that you could do anything. And if you tried running, they would just auto attack you down. You could not escape. But now at least you might have a chance to get out of melee range if they try to just spam short sword swings. So, you know, kind of justified. Unfortunately, this also means that Slayer fighters can no longer stick on targets by swinging away with the short sword. You know, and I don't think Slayer fighters are really overpowered, so we're gonna, that's an option we'll probably miss. I also had a whole bunch of clips comparing the different like walking speeds as you're swinging away with different weapons, and you know, the short sword is the clear winner. I'm gonna play them anyway because I put a lot of effort into it. You know, we can look back on these clips and reminisce, you know, rest in peace, fast short sword. But hey, fighters have access to a wider range of like longer reaching weapons when compared to a rogue. So, you know, this is workaroundable if you want to just use your main hand only and run something like a Castellan in your left hand, so you get -10 move speed instead of the short sword's now -13, which makes my last video a little more relevant because I'm calculating the damage, like the DPS of the main hand animations and swings for the most part. But again, despite the -13 move speed on the short sword now and the -25% move speed while you're swinging away, there is still an upside to using it. Again, cutting down that first swing on your first main hand swings animation by swinging the short sword first does make a pretty relevant change in DPS. They also released a brand new main hand weapon for us Slayer fighters to consider, the Warhammer. So I figured it only made sense to include it in this list and see how it matched up damage-wise to the other popular weapons that Slayer fighters like to use. And apologies, you're gonna see you know, the maintenance message disappear and the queue look a little more like it did in the past before the rotation, because I'm taking footage from earlier in this week to footage that I'm recording now after the updates. So, you know, all the information in this video is still relevant, but, you know, I'm just letting you know it's going to be a little bit mixed up.
yeah.
I think some of you may be surprised by these results, and some of you may not be surprised at all. But once again, I just wanted to see which flurry did the most damage in the shortest amount of time. Realistically, there's no point in just wailing away and seeing the average DPS over time. We want to see like short bursts when you get your moment to go in as a Slayer fighter and deal some damage. I think 3 swings is a pretty reasonable assumption that you're going to be able to pull off in a fight. Oh, the perks are the same as the last video. I'll just throw them over here again. Same gear too. Nothing that amplifies damage or swing speed or anything like that. But that's enough setup. Let's get to the video. Alright guys, we're gonna start with the Falchion this time around. You know, I think this is probably one of the best weapons for PDR fighters. It just hits so hard per swing. It's insane. It feels like a two-handed weapon damage, honestly, at times. But with Slayer, you want to take a little more advantage of that +5 weapon damage, which will scale better with faster swinging weapons. However, like y'all suggested, if you swing with the short sword first, you cut up on that first swing's wind-up time, which does significantly boost the DPS of the flurry here. So you can see here, starting with the short sword first with this 3-hit combo, short sword and then 2 Falchion swings, we're dealing 196 damage in about 2.65 seconds, which is around 73.96 DPS. It's basically 74 DPS. Which is really good. If you recall my previous video, the short sword combo by itself did around 70 DPS in its 3-hit combo, and it was the second highest DPS weapon in that entire video. So this is already significantly higher than that. And even if you're squaring off with somebody face to face, you know, you should do that flurry if you want to trade efficiently. You know, first short sword swing and then 2 falchion swings is going to do way more damage than just the falchion or just the short sword. It within the same time frame. Interesting result. Yeah, that's good. That's really good. You guys are right, man. Swinging that short sword first makes a huge difference. But let's see how it affects some of the other weapons. Alright, so if you watched my last video, you know that the Flanged Mace by itself did more DPS than the Falchion did actually when, you know, hitting the sweet spot over and over again. Or impact zone, I'm sorry. I should use the correct terminology. Dark and Darker calls it an impact zone. I'll call it an impact zone. But I was actually pretty surprised at the results here. So as you can see here, the short sword does cut down on the Flanged Mace's initial swing, but not as much as it does on the Falchion, or at least it doesn't feel that way. But yeah, we're dealing 189 damage over around 2.5 seconds, which is only 73 DPS, not near 74 like the Falchion and short sword combo. This is actually, you know, it's a bit less, not significantly so, I'd say. It's around 1 DPS per second, which isn't massive. However, there are 2 things to consider. Again, the Flanged Mace has a terrible terrible yellow impact zone. It deals like 70% damage at the hilt, which is pretty big. It's a lot bigger than its positive impact zone where you're dealing 100% damage. It slows you down about the same rate of movement speed as the Falchion does while swinging as well. There is the one saving grace of the armor penetration though, the 15% that applies to the short sword as well as the Flanged Mace itself. And the 15% is significant. It can take somebody from 70% PDR down to like 50.9-ish from the math, if I'm correct. They have a formula on their wiki, and if it's accurate, it is interesting that the 50% armor penetration doesn't just take 15% of the armor value or anything and subtract their armor from that. It's actually applied directly to their physical damage reduction. So might need some double checking on this, but if their formula is accurate and I've calculated it accurately, it is more effective than just subtracting from their armor total, which is good. That means it does more damage than I initially thought. So that's pretty good against clerics and fighters, especially PDR fighters, since they've been so dominant, although I've been seeing less of them now. But again, you have to weigh that against just the really bad just impact zone ratio of the Flanged Mace and the slowdown. It slows you down the same amount as the Falchion, but again, that armor penetration could be significant against a really geared fighter or cleric. You know, if you're hitting a PDR fighter who has 70% physical damage reduction for 100 and they reduce your damage down to 30 because of their armor, but then you use a Flanged Mace, you are then reducing their physical damage reduction of 70% to around 51-ish%. So instead of hitting them for 30, you're hitting them for closer to 50. I mean, that is definitely significant. So if you ever get good with hitting the Flanged Mace sweet spot consistently, maybe something to use, maybe something to consider. I don't know. All right, the new kid on the block. Let's talk about the Warhammer. So if we're just looking at the main hand only, with the Slayer Fighter build that I was running, we're getting 3 swings in, that's totaling to 198 damage, close to 3 seconds, 67.5 DPS, which isn't terrible. Again, if you remember from the old video, weapons that are around 70-ish DPS, high 60s are what we want to look for. That's like decent, it's significant. It's actually clocking in just below the Flanged Mace only if you were just swinging the Flanged Mace by itself, but it does have 5% more armor penetration. It has 20% armor pen instead of 15%, which is significant. It'll increase your DPS across the board by a little bit, but obviously more relevant against fighters and clerics. And just for consistency with the other weapons on this list, I wanted to keep it to a 3-hit combo. I know the Warhammer's combo is 4 hits, but even crunching the numbers with that, there wasn't a huge change in DPS. But let's see how it performs with the short sword. So for this one, I used the lower damage of the common quality short swords. It's the one outlier here. So I just revised the numbers for it. I revised it to 47 instead of 45. You can see with the asterisk there. But yeah, we're hitting for 178 over 2.5 seconds pretty much, which is 71.68 DPS. It's not bad, but it's actually not very high compared to the other combos on this list. I noticed that the short sword doesn't actually cut down on the wind-up time of that first swing for the Warhammer, which is strange. It really makes a noticeable difference with every other weapon on the list, but for some reason the Warhammer it doesn't really change too much. So honestly, for a Slayer fighter, I don't think it's that great. It's not even a damage issue. The damage is fine, and it's the armor penetration is really good. You know, as we saw with the Flanged Mace, it makes a huge difference against fighters and clerics. It's really just a reach issue. So as you can see from this clip here, you know, I'm swinging at the target dummy with both weapons. I take a step back and I'm missing with both weapons. You know, they seem like they have pretty much the same range, or at least very similar. And the reach isn't terrible, but when you have access to something like the Falchion or the arming sword, and even the Flanged feels like it has more reach than the Warhammer. It's hard to justify using it on a Slayer fighter. I actually like the animations. I like the sideways swings. The animations are great. It's just a reach issue. So personally, I don't think you should run it on a Slayer fighter, honestly. You know, against a cleric and a PDR fighter, it's going to be pretty useful. It'll definitely chunk their health down more than most weapons, but you have to get so close to them to do it. And I feel like as a Slayer fighter, again, you want to be kind of ducking in and out of a fight. You don't really want to trade with these classes. Usually you want to kind of use your mobility and like get a bunch of hits in, back off, get a bunch of hits in again, back off. You want to kind of go in and out of melee range using the maximum reach of your weapons. And the Warhammer, I don't know, the reach is just so short, you have to get in there and you will inevitably take hits from these people and you will not win these trades. So yeah, I don't think the Warhammer is very good for Slayer fighters, but I don't think it's a terrible option on PDR fighters. You know, you probably want to use the Falchion on a PDR fighter again, just for the reach, especially since you're so immobile. But I can see a situation where if you're just, you know, in somebody's face, another, you know, if you're a geared PDR fighter versus another geared PDR fighter, and you're in their face, or if you're up against a cleric and their smite is off cooldown, I could see you using the Warhammer because you will win those trades like by a huge margin. That is some big damage. Like the one-handed moveset isn't bad, and honestly the sweet spot sour spot ratio with the impact zones doesn't feel too terrible on the Warhammer. So I could see it being good for PDR fighter, and I've been testing it out on PDR fighter. It doesn't feel bad. I still think Falchion's probably better, but definitely something to give a whirl. It definitely chunks armored foes' health down pretty quickly. So yeah, something to consider. But again, for Slayer, I don't think so. Alright guys, so I don't know if this was clear from the last video, but I mentioned that the Falchion front loads its damage on the first two swings, which is true. That delay on the third swing kind of kills its DPS if you're using the Falchion 3-hit combo by itself. And I briefly mentioned that the arming sword does something similar, where the first two swings do a lot more DPS than the delayed third swing. And that stab is just so annoying to aim. But I was surprised that the short sword with this combo specifically actually seemed to reduce the wind-up time on the first swing more than any other combo in this video. We're dealing 170 damage in 2.18 seconds, which is 77 DPS, almost 78 DPS.
Wow.
That is way higher than anything else on this list, guys. The overall damage dealt is a little bit lower than the Falchion and short sword combo, which is 196 over a longer course of time, you know, 2.65 seconds. But that is a lot of damage dealt in a pretty reasonable amount of time, man. Just a little over 2 seconds. That you can get in, get those 3 hits in, and get back out pretty reasonably. I mean, a lot of good players will be able to like react within that time frame and do something, but you know, that's a lot shorter than 2.6 seconds. Just as a bonus, I mean, I feel like it's worth mentioning that it clears PvE a lot faster than just using the short sword combo or the arming sword combo by itself. You should use the short sword and 2 arming swings because you can kill most high roller goblins in that combo if you have a decent kit. You don't even need anything crazy. So with each goblin you kill that way, you're saving yourself quite a bit of time, and you'll be able to get to where you need to go a little faster. And this isn't very surprising because Slayer adds +5 flat damage, as I mentioned earlier in this video and in the old video, to weapons, and a faster swinging weapon is going to benefit from that a lot more than a slower swinging one. So yeah, I mean, the winner here is the arming sword short sword as far as raw damage goes, man. It is way higher. Unless you're a god with the Flanged Mace and can hit that sweet spot and you're up against a plate fighter, then the Flanged Mace short sword would most likely win out. But for every other purpose, it just seems like the short sword arming sword is the way to go, which is great because that's mostly what I've been running, and it feels really good. I mean, don't mind the plate fighter in the background. I've been running that too.
Sorry.
But this doesn't mean the Falchion short sword is a bad combo or the loser by any means, because honestly, the Falchion feels like it has more reach than probably both of these weapons. It's really good. But I mean, the numbers don't lie, guys. From a pure damage standpoint, the arming sword and short sword win. Again, I hope you enjoyed this video. Sorry that it's so similar to the last one. There will be gameplay videos on the way. I know I've been playing, and I'll have some good ones coming up soon, I promise. But on the flip side, if you like these videos, I mean, I was thinking about doing one with the two-handed weapons down the line, so let me know if you're interested in seeing that. And obviously I will update this video because the game's in early access, so I know Iron Mace is going to be changing things around and tweaking numbers. So as they do, and as they add new weapons, I'll probably just make a new version of this video. But that's going to be it for now, guys. Till next time.